City and county leaders gathered today to try to find a solution to the opioid epidemic. Already this month, 14 people have died from suspected overdoses in Knox County. That brings the total this year to 237 suspected deaths. For all of last year, 293 people died from ODs. The mayor's summit on substance misuse addressed the impact the epidemic is having on our community. As 10 News reporter Marc Sallinger found, it is a scourge with a financial as well as a human impact. Mark.
Robin and Brandon, substance abuse and addiction cost the United States more than $800 billion annually. Here in Knox County, we feel the effects of drugs in our community among our friends and our neighbors.
In Knox County, it's hard to find anyone who has not been affected by the opioid epidemic.
The battles I faced, the demons I faced.
Most either know someone who is addicted or, like Jason Goodman, battled addiction themselves.
I spent the next 30 years using drugs.
With county leaders looking on, Jason shared his story of addiction and the path that led him to work to make sure no one else succumbs to drugs.
Very, very humbled by the opportunity to be in a room with these folks.
Inside the mayor's summit on substance misuse,
I believe that the opioid and drug issue is the most important issue that we face.
Talks of prevention, treatment, and how to stop people from overdosing.
We're trying to come up with ways to actually access treatment for these individuals while they are in the criminal justice system.
For District Attorney General Sharm Allen, the battle against opioids has led to a reform in the way prosecutors try cases.
We, in the criminal justice system, deal with crime. We deal with public safety. We were not set up to deal with addiction issues, with treatment issues, but unfortunately, this epidemic has caused us to have to be very aware of that.
The goal today was not to solve the epidemic, but to bring people together who can.
Hopefully we're breaking down some barriers between various organizations.
No one knows when it will get better, but for people like Jason Goodman, it's impossible not to be optimistic.
When I look at my own life, when I look at where I came from to where I am today, where I came from yesterday to today, of course I'm optimistic.
The estimated cost of addiction to the state of Tennessee is around $2 billion annually. Much of that comes from an estimated 31,000 people who are out of work because of addiction. Brandon, Robin.
All right, Marc Sallinger, thank you very much.